please do remind me, okay? All right. This is the presentation on movement in and out of cells, the topic which we are doing, which we already started the last week. So let's start with the topic. This presentation is uploaded on Teams. You may check, I believe, week 7 or 8, the offline lessons. All right, sweeties. On page, we are on page number. We will be doing page number 33 today. But before that, we shall quickly revise the contents which we covered already last week, inshallah. The topic today is to be able to explain the difference of active and passive transport. We already spoke about the passive transport. So can you please tell me what are the two processes or two types of movement which are examples of passive transport?
Miss, can I?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Diffusion and osmosis.
Very good. Diffusion and osmosis. Excellent. So I'm downloading the attendance. We have 22 attendees so far. All right. So before I read out also this, you have the information, the same information from the textbook as to what is the objective and the skill for the core and the supplement. Also, from the MLG, I want to read out, these are the guidelines which we follow before teaching about the objectives and skills. For the osmosis topic, the objective is to investigate and describe the effects on plant tissues of immersing them in solutions of different concentrations, and also to state that plants are supported by the pressure of water inside the cells pressing outwards on the cell wall. Okay, so basically we study about how water diffuses through partially permeable membranes by osmosis, which we already did in our last lesson. And the skill is to investigate and describe the effects on plant tissues of immersing them in solutions again, and also to state the water, how it diffuses through partially permeable membrane. It is the same objective and the skill. Okay, sweetie, so let's go ahead. Would anyone like to recap the contents which we covered already, or do you want me to do it? Okay, let me do it then. We were discussing about the osmosis and the diffusion. Both are the movement of molecules from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration till an equilibrium is reached, and also down a concentration gradient, right? So let me quickly revise with the presentation which we are doing today. Cells, they need food materials which they can oxidize for energy or use to build up their cell structures, right? They also need salts and water which play a part in chemical reactions in the cell. Finally, they need to get rid of the substances such as carbon dioxide, which are the waste products of photosynthesis. You think carbon dioxide is the waste product in plants or in animals?
In animals.
In animals, which if it gets accumulated in the cell, would upset some of the chemical reactions or even poison the cell. All right. So this process of diffusion and osmosis is very, very important. As you can see on the screen, this is how the diffusion takes place in the simulation. Diffusion is, you can define it as the net movement of molecules and ions from a region of their higher concentration to a region of their lower concentration down a concentration gradient as a result of their random movement. Okay, you can see a few drops of dye which have been added to this liquid solution over here. You can see how slowly the liquid, it gets mixed up, and the entire liquid, it turns blue. This happens because of the diffusion. We also discussed the diffusion. It takes place not only in gases but also liquids and gases. And it may take in any type of solution, be it the absorption of nutrients in our digestive system or the various exchange of gases and the salts and mineral ions which takes place in plants. Whereas osmosis, it is only the diffusion of water. It is mentioned as osmosis. And also whenever you're discussing about osmosis, there is a presence of a semi-permeable membrane or a barrier between the higher concentration and the lower concentration. Alright, you can also see in the simulation as to how the diffusion takes place of the molecules. Is it clear, ladies? Can you see how the diffusion takes place?
Yes.
Great. So this is how it happens, movement from a higher concentration to the lower concentration till then equilibrium is reached. Alright, so this was about diffusion. Also, give me a moment. You can also see over here how the diffusion takes place in liquids in this particular simulation. Okay, so molecules and gases, we already know that they move faster compared to the molecules and liquids, right? They bump into one another and spread out to fill up all the space available, and molecules and liquid do this as well, although it takes longer for them to fill up the space. Because molecules in the gas, they move faster and they spread out faster. So the difference in speed between the movement in gases and liquids is important for the organisms. This movement of molecules is known as diffusion, as you can see on the screen over here. Alright, you can also see the diffusion being explained over here, diffusion in gases. This is how before diffusion the gases are. Okay, as we discuss an example of the gas coming out from the rotten egg, which is hydrogen sulfide gas. If you put a rotten egg in one corner of the room, you can see before diffusion, this is the blue molecules are the gas of the hydrogen sulfide, and this is the gas molecules of the rest of the room. So slowly you can see the diffusion takes place from the higher concentration to the lower concentration, and after some time you can see the entire room, it smells of hydrogen sulfide gas because of the diffusion. Alright, so diffusion in a gas, you can see molecules of a colored gas spread throughout the container. Is it clear, ladies? Do you have any doubts so far? Shall I move on? Because this is a recap of what we did already. I want you all to go through this presentation again at home, and I hope it's clear already. Do you have any doubts? Shall I move on?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, so this picture shows you the diffusion in a liquid, how it takes place. If you're going to define diffusion as we did already, it is the net movement of molecules or ions from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration down a concentration gradient. Okay, and it is a passive movement. We are calling it passive because no energy is involved. Okay, so you can see how the diffusion takes place in the liquids over here. You can see the solute. If you take an example of sugar, which we add to the solvent, which is water over here, the blue molecules are the water molecules and the red molecules are the sugar. This is before diffusion. You can see after diffusion, molecules of solute dispersed through water. That means the sugar has been mixed up with the water, and this is the sugar solution. So this is how the diffusion takes place in liquids. Also, if you're talking about the energy involved, the energy for diffusion comes from the kinetic energy of random movement of molecules and ions. So basically, as we studied in the particle theory, because of the movement of the molecules in liquids or gases, the kinetic energy which is produced, that is used up in this osmosis and diffusion. Otherwise, we don't need any other energy from the cell. Like we don't use the ATP or the energy produced during photosynthesis for these processes to take place. Okay, but there are certain factors on which the diffusion and the osmosis depend upon. They are the speed with which a substance diffuses through a cell wall or cell membrane will depend on temperature and many other conditions, including the distance it has to diffuse, the difference between its concentration inside and outside the cell, and also the size of its molecules or ions and the surface area across which the diffusion is occurring. Okay, so the greater the surface area, the faster is the total diffusion. Can someone please read out these factors that affect the diffusion from this slide?
Can I read?
Yeah, go ahead.
These factors influence the Efficiency of diffusion. Distant molecules have to travel. Note that cell membrane are very thin. The concentration gradient cell. You miss my voice.
No problem. You may just read out the colored areas over here, because those are the factors that actually affect the diffusion.
Okay. The surface area, the temperature.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So these are the factors that affect the diffusion, which would be the distance the molecules have to travel. Note that cell membranes are very, very thin. We discussed this already when we were doing the last topic about the cell organelles. The cell membranes, they are really, really thin, and they are semi-permeable, allowing the choice of exchange of materials. Whereas the cell wall, it is fully permeable, which is present in the plants. It allows the exchange of mineral ions and water and fluids through it fully, and also the exchange of gases. Okay, and the next factor is the concentration gradient. Cells use the substances that diffuse as quickly as possible, so they keep a low concentration inside the cytoplasm. This means that molecules, they keep diffusing into the cell because the cell is maintaining a steep concentration gradient. So whenever the concentration in the cytoplasm is low, you may observe the ions and the gases, they keep diffusing from outside the cell to inside the cell. Why? Because the concentration outside the cell is more compared to the concentration inside the cell, and this is how the diffusion takes place. And the next factor is the surface area. Some cells, they have cell membranes that are folded to give a large surface to allow many molecules to cross by diffusion. Can you please give me an example of a cell organelle that has a large surface area? Girls? Can you give me an example of any cell organelle which has a large surface area?
Miss, I'm not sure, but is it?
Yeah, we did this when we were studying about the cell organelles in the last topic, cell structure and organelles. Did we study about the mitochondria's mitochondrion's inner membrane, which is folded, right?
Plant cell.
Right, mitochondrion, it is present both in plant and animal cells. So its inner membrane, it is folded in order to increase the surface area, right? Did we study that? Okay, so these some cells, they have cell membranes that are folded to give a larger surface area. Why? In order to allow many molecules to cross by diffusion. Then again, the temperature also plays an important role. Molecules, they move faster and collide more often as the temperature increases, and diffusion is faster at warmer temperatures. Okay, so when the temperature is high, the diffusion becomes faster. Alright, so now, this is the picture we have in our textbook as well, showing the diffusion of the molecules. You can see the diffusion is a result of random movement of particles, and it happens from high concentration from the outside the cell over here to the low concentration to the inside of the cell. Clear so far, ladies? Any doubts so far? Is it clear?
No, miss, there's no doubt.
Okay, great. So in this slide, you can see how the diffusion takes place in the living organisms, giving an example of a plant cell. So you can see in this picture, it is a leaf cell which has the stomata over here, which is the opening which allows the exchange of gases. You can see through this opening, the carbon dioxide, it enters the leaf, of course, by the process of diffusion, and also the water and oxygen, which are the byproducts or the end products of the process of photosynthesis, they also leave the leaf and they are diffused into the outer atmosphere because of the process of diffusion. Okay, both the exchange of gases, it takes place, be it the taking up of carbon dioxide from the outside atmosphere for the process of photosynthesis to take place, and also the removal of water and oxygen, it takes place through the stomata which are present on the surface of the leaf. The living organisms, they obtain many of their requirements by diffusion. They also get rid of many of their waste in this way. For example, plants, they need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, and this diffuses from the air into the leaves through the stomata. It does this because there is a lower concentration of carbon dioxide inside the leaf than outside. So outside the leaf, there is a higher concentration, which helps for the diffusion to take place. Similarly, whenever the oxygen diffuses out of the leaf after the process of photosynthesis, there is a higher concentration of oxygen inside the leaf because it is being made there. Therefore, oxygen diffuses out through the stomata into the air. So that was about plants. You can also check about the diffusion, how it takes place in humans. You can see the digestive system of the humans over here. Diffusion is also important in gas exchange for respiration in animals and plants. Cell membranes are freely permeable to oxygen and carbon dioxide, so these easily diffuse into and out of the cells. So some of the products of digestion are also absorbed from the ileum of the mammals by diffusion. Okay, so here in the small intestine, after the digestion process takes place, the nutrients, they are absorbed into the blood by the process of diffusion. Okay, so this is how the diffusion takes place in both plants and in animals. Next, we also discussed water as a solvent. Water is an universal solvent and it dissolves almost everything in it except for oil. So in this picture, you can see how the solute dissolves into the water, and once it completely dissolves, it forms into a solution, as you can see in this picture here. Right, so this is what is shown on the slide. Water is a universal solvent, and about 75% of cytoplasm is water, and it is the main component of transport fluids like blood, xylem sap and phloem sap in the plants. Okay, so it can dissolve and everything except for oil. Water is also needed for digestion and excretion to take place. Okay, now, so again explaining about how the diffusion takes place in both plants and in animals. If it is in animals, in the ileum, like humans, water-soluble vitamins such as vitamin B and vitamin C are absorbed into the bloodstream by the process of diffusion. And also in the kidneys, some solutes in the renal such as urea and salts, they pass back into the bloodstream by the process of diffusion. So these are the various examples of how diffusion takes place in plants and also in humans and animals. Initially, glucose is reabsorbed by diffusion, but active transport is also involved. So far we discussed about osmosis and diffusion. We are yet to discuss about active transport, which we shall start once I recap the contents. So is it clear so far, girls? Clear about diffusion?
Yes, Miss.
Shall we recap about osmosis now? Okay, as you can see in the simulation here, this is how the osmosis takes place. You can see the movement of the water molecules from the higher concentration, which is from the left side, to the lower concentration on the right side through a semi-permeable membrane. So this explains to you as to how the osmosis takes place. You can see the water level, it gradually decreases on the left side and increases on the right side. Can you explain why it happens like that? Yeah, can someone please explain what's going on in here in the simulation?
Because the water molecules of higher concentration are moving to the low concentrated area to equilibrium it.
Very good. So that is why you see the water level coming down, because on the left side it is a dilute solution where the water concentration is high compared to the right side wherein you can see the sugar concentration. The green molecules are the sugar molecules here. So as water moves from higher concentration to the lower concentration through the semi-permeable membrane, which allows only the exchange of water molecules, so you can see gradually the water level, it goes down on the left side as it increases on the right side. Okay, so if your dilute solution is separated from a concentrated solution by a partially permeable membrane, water diffuses across the membrane from the dilute to the concentrated solution, as you can see in this simulation. Same thing, you can also see what happens through the cell membrane. This is a cell membrane and this is how it looks. It is Semi-permeable because it has tiny holes in it, and each cell is surrounded by a cell membrane. The cell membrane has tiny holes in which allow small molecules to pass through it but not larger ones, and the cell membrane is described as semi-permeable or partially permeable. So osmosis is essential in biological systems as biological membranes are semi-permeable. Okay, so let's check out in this slide. This is a picture which shows again how the osmosis takes place from the movement of the molecules from the left side to the right side through a semi-permeable membrane. Osmosis is a special kind of diffusion involving water molecules. It occurs when two solutions are separated by a partially permeable membrane. Okay, osmosis, it is the diffusion of water from a dilute solution into a more concentrated solution through a partially permeable membrane. This is how you can define osmosis. Okay, you can again see in this picture over here how the osmosis takes place. You can see from the dilute solution to the right to the concentrated solution on the left, the water molecules, they move. Water will diffuse from the dilute solution to the concentrated solution through the partially permeable membrane. As a result, the liquid level will rise on the left and fall on the right. This is exactly what happens even in the simulation which we watched in the previous slide. Clear about the osmosis, ladies? Any doubts? Is it clear?
Yes, Miss.
Great. So here again it is shown as to how the osmosis process takes place from high concentration to the low water concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So you can define it as osmosis is the movement of water from an area of high water concentration to an area of low water concentration through a selectively permeable membrane. Alright, talking about the water potential here. Water potential is a way of thinking about the ability of water to move by osmosis. Okay, so wherever the water concentration is, the molecules of water are present in high, meaning if the solution is dilute wherein the water concentration is high, that means it has a high water potential. And if it is a concentrated solution which contains more solute molecules and fewer water molecules, then it has a low water potential. As it is explained in this picture, on the left side you can see there is no solute at all, no solute molecules. You can see only the water molecules moving freely, meaning the water, it has high water concentration, meaning high water potential concentration. Why? Because the water molecules are fewer compared to the solute molecules, meaning it has low water potential. Okay, so you can see sugar is a solute. It attracts the water molecules and water molecules are attracted to the solute, so it is less free to move. It is clearly explained about the water potential on the screen. Is it clear, ladies, about the high water potential and the low water potential?
I didn't understand the high water potential.
Okay. So can you see on the left side, do you see more of water molecules or sugar molecules?
Water molecules.
Water molecules. So can you see that on the left side beaker that there is high water concentration?
No.
Why not?
On the left side.
On the left side, yes. On the left side, the water concentration is high because there are only water molecules. That means there is high water potential. And on the right side, you can see the water concentration is low because the solute concentration is more, right? And whenever the water concentration is low, it means low water potential. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Another way of explaining it is whenever the solution is dilute, it has higher water potential, and whenever the solution is concentrated, it has low water potential. Clear? Is it clear, sweetie?
Oh, yes, it's clear.
Okay, great. Okay, so if you're defining water potential, it is the measure of the ability of water molecules to move freely in a solution. All this means is that is a solution of pure water where there is no solute. All of the water molecules are free to move, so the water potential is high. And if a solute is added to the solution, it is attracted to the water molecules, so those water molecules can no longer move freely, and the water potential is low, as we just saw in this picture. This is what is explained over here. Alright, now in this diagram you can also see there is a water potential gradient between the two sides of the membrane. This is exactly what we discussed about on the diagram which we have in your textbook on page number 31. Okay, so we discussed about how the water molecules, they diffuse down this water potential gradient from a region of higher water potential to a region of lower water potential through a partially permeable membrane. So this partially permeable membrane, it can allow only the exchange of water molecules which are smaller in size. And will it allow the exchange of the sugar molecules which are bigger in size, girls?
No, miss, because the sugar molecules are already too big.
Very good. So the sugar molecules are too big and so they cannot pass through this partially permeable membrane. Only the water molecules can diffuse. So however, since there are many more water molecules present on the left hand side, there will be a net movement of molecules through the membrane from left to right down the water potential, because the water, it moves from the area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. Okay, so this is what is explained in this picture over here. Clearly, you can see the higher concentration of water, that is higher potential on the left side, and the lower concentration of water, meaning lower water potential on the right side. Now, we shall talk about how osmosis takes place in plant and animal cells. Okay, so you can see in this picture, this is a picture of a plant cell, and you can also see this is a large vacuole which is filled with the cell sap. Okay, so the cell membrane of the plant cell is partially permeable, and the cell sap inside the vacuole is a solution of salts and sugars. So when plant cells are placed in water, the water enters the cells. This is because there is a water potential gradient, so that water molecules, they diffuse into the cells by osmosis. We also discussed about the various examples of how this takes place in when we were studying it last week. So you can see the various pictures of a turgid cell, and you can see this cell, it is in a dilute solution, it becomes turgid. How? Because of the concentration of the water inside the cell, it is less compared to the surrounding solution. Then water diffuses from outside to inside the cell, wherein increasing the concentration inside. So this is how the cell, it swells as the water keeps on diffusing inside, and it becomes turgid, that means swollen and turgid. Likewise, you can see this cell, it does not have any difference in shape. It is neither shrunk nor it is swollen. It is of the same regular shape, meaning the water concentration is the same both inside and outside the cell. Over here, you can see the water concentration inside the cell is more compared to the surrounding water. So what happens then? The water diffuses from inside the cell to the outside, causing the cell to shrink, making the cell flaccid. Flaccid meaning it is a shrunk cell. The water concentration and the ions and salts, they start diffusing from the inside the cell to the outside, making the cell very shrunken and flaccid. Okay, and in picture 4, you can see this is a plasmolyzed cell wherein the cytoplasm is pulled away from the wall. So whenever this shrinking happens, whenever this diffusion takes place from inside the cell to the outside, plasmolysis takes place. Now I'll tell you what is plasmolysis. Okay, so you can see in this picture, can you see the left side plant which is really healthy? And you can see it is watered and it is very healthy and growing very well. Whereas the right side plant, you can see it is wilted and it is a little dried up. It is not as fresh as the left side plant. Can you tell me the reason why it could have happened? Girls?
Can I answer, miss?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because the leaf itself doesn't have enough water in the large vacuole. Therefore, that's why it doesn't look as healthy.
Very good. So this is what is explained in this picture. So the leaf cells over here, they are turgid, meaning they have enough water. They are swollen, and that is why this plant, it looks really, really fresh. This is how the cell looks like, with enough water in it. Whereas on the right side, you can see a placid plant, meaning it is wilted, meaning the water has moved out from the plant to the surrounding atmosphere. Because over here, the diffusion has taken place from the plant cell to the outside atmosphere. So this is how the plant cell looks like from when the water diffuses from inside the plant cell to outside. So the leaves have lost most of the moisture into the outside atmosphere. That is why they are looking wilted like this. So this is an example of a class from a leaf with no water. Okay. So the water pressure within the cell acts against the inelastic cell walls, keeping the cells turgid and firm in a turgid cell. However, when these cells, they lose water, they no longer are firm and turgid like this. Plant stem and leaves have lost water, and that is why the right side plant, it looks wilted. Is it clear, girls? Any questions from the turgid cell and the placid cell? Is it clear, ladies?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, great. So you can see in the slide also the difference between a turgid cell and a placid cell. The turgid cell, it is swollen because it has enough water in it. And you can see the placid cell, it has lost water from inside the cell to the surrounding atmosphere. And that is how it is looking shrunk and placid and wilted. All right, and you can see on the slide about the osmosis and the plant cell. This is how the cell looks like when most of the water, it is diffused out of the cell. Osmosis takes place, water diffuses out of the cytoplasm and vacuole through the partially permeable membrane, which is a cell membrane. First, the cell shrinks slightly and becomes flaccid. Then the cell membrane pulls away from the cell wall and the cell is plasmolyzed. So this type of a cell wherein you can see these gaps between the cell membrane and the cytoplasm, it is known as a plasmolyzed cell. This happens when the cell, it loses water. Okay, so when the cell becomes placid after losing most of the water into the outside atmosphere, slowly the cytoplasm, it starts pulling away from the cell membrane like this, as you can see in this picture. Can you see the gaps between the cytoplasm and the cell wall over here, girls? Can you see the space? Girls, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is how a plasmolyzed cell looks like. So this means plasmolysis has taken place after the cell has shrunken. Also, the cytoplasm is pulling away from the cell wall. This happens when too much of water is lost from the cell. Whereas on the left hand side, you can see this is a picture of a turgid cell wherein the cell wall is intact, the cell membrane is also intact. You can see more concentrated solution inside the cell vacuole. This is when the osmosis takes place and water diffuses into the cytoplasm and vacuole through the partially permeable cell surface membrane, and the cell swells and becomes firm and turgid. So this is a difference between a turgid cell and a placid cell. So how do you define plasmolysis? Here you can see clearly in this picture, this is a normal cell. This is how the plasmolysis is taking place. When the water diffuses out, the cytoplasm slowly starts pulling away. And you can see in picture C, the cytoplasm has completely pulled away from the cell membrane. So the shrinking of protoplasm or cytoplasm away from the cell wall of a plant or bacterial cell due to water loss from osmosis, thereby resulting in gaps between the cell wall and the cell membrane, is known as plasmolysis. Is it clear, ladies, what is plasmolysis?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so you can see the difference between the onion cells. The left side onion cells are turgid, meaning they have enough water, and the right side onion cells, they are flaccid, meaning most of the water has been lost into the outside atmosphere. Now in this slide, you can see how the osmosis takes place in the animal cells. The same example we discussed when we were talking about the osmosis in animal cells last week. You can see this is the normal RBC and this is the turgid RBC, and you can see this is a flaccid, this is a flaccid RBC and this is a turgid RBC. Can someone explain what you can see on this picture, but the difference between A, B and C cells, please? Who wants to explain about it? We have 23 attendees. I'm downloading the attendance. Yes, sweeties. Who wants to explain about the difference between these three cells, A, B, and C? We did this already when we were when I was teaching you last week about the osmosis in animal cells. Didn't we discuss this?
Can I explain?
Go ahead, sweetie.
In figure A, the concentration of water molecules inside and outside the cell are both equal. In figure B, the concentration of water molecules inside the cell is more than the concentration of, or it's more than the concentration of the water molecules outside the cell. And then for figure C,
so what's happening in cell B? Can you also explain that?
Water is leaving the cell because from high concentration to higher concentration to lower concentration.
Very good.
And then
for the cell, what? How does the cell look like when this happens?
It's going to be flaccid.
Very good. So it is flaccid and it is shrunk. Why? Because the water molecules are moving from inside to the outside. Then what's happening in C?
The concentration of water molecules outside the cell is higher than the concentration of water molecules inside the cell. Therefore, the cells, obviously, since the water molecules move from high concentration to low concentration, the cell is going to receive water molecules, resulting in a healthy, turgid-looking cell.
Very good. Excellently explained. Who is it? Who is this? Shahad. Very well explained, ya Shahad. Excellent. So this is what is being shown in this picture, ladies. Did all of you understand what Shahad just now explained? Is it clear to you the difference between A, B, and C? Girls?
Yes. Yeah.
Any doubts?
No.
So that is why you can see the RBC in A, they are normal looking because there is no change at all. The concentration, it is the same inside and outside the cell. Whereas B, you can see it is a flaccid RBC. Why? Because of the movement of water molecules from inside to outside, making it shrunken. And in C, you can see a turgid RBC. Why? Because of the movement from outside to inside, making it more swollen and turgid. Clear so far, ladies? Okay, the entire lesson we discussed the topics which we already covered, so it is a very good kind of a recap of what we covered so far as to how osmosis takes place in animal cells and also the plant cells. Inshallah, we shall discuss about how active transport takes place. We shall discuss about active transport in our next lesson. Okay? Any doubts? Any questions? Girls? I shall send you the homework on the group, inshallah, as to what is the homework.